Welcome to the WiLD Toolkit for Higher Ed. My name is Dr. Daniel Hallak, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at WiLD Leaders, and I'm really excited to give you a picture of how we use the WiLD Toolkit to develop leaders across faculty, staff, and students in higher ed. Here's what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to start by giving you the why, talking to you about what does whole and intentional leader development look like. And then I'm going to move to the how, give you a bit of an insight into what the WiLD Toolkit is and how powerful this system of 10 developmental assessments is. And then we're going to move to the what and give you some practical examples for programs we have both partnered with universities to run on their own, as well as programs we have built and run for them to develop faculty and staff as leaders, as well as to embed our process into the curriculum for student development as leaders and as a vocational discernment process. So, what is WiLD? WiLD stands for Whole and Intentional Leader Development. And it's really important for us to share these words with you. Not only is it our brand and the name of our business, but it's also our philosophy for approaching whole leader development. Each of these words is meaningful, and if I think of the word whole, a couple things come to mind. First, when we're talking about developing people and leaders, we're talking about whole people. And while this certainly means that we're going to tie into the personal and the professional aspects of an individual's development, it also means that we're looking at them as whole people and whole persons. And I love the movement we've had over the last couple decades towards strengths and focusing on potential and accelerating our capabilities. At the same time, I'm really aware of the fact that several decades of research on the developmental journey of leaders and our own experience, if we're honest, would suggest that while strengths and our potential matters, it's our blind spots that are the things that are going to trip us up and hurt us and the folks around us who we are leading. And so a whole perspective takes into account both the beauty and the brokenness of the developmental journey of a leader. The word intentional matters too, because this is more than just having good intentions or, the thought that counts. This is about being intentional and having specific, clear pathways for us to be able to structure and scaffold the developmental journey. We care about leaders, and while this process is used by teams as a team development process, there's a big difference between the person who is in that moment of leading, taking that action verb, and stepping out and going first, versus the times when folks are not. And we want to be able to develop a courageous and sacrificial leader who is prepared for the moment when those storms come so they can stand well for their sake and the sake of those around them. And development, really at the heart, is change. And anytime we talk about developing somebody or asking them to develop, we're asking that they change. And a word we often use internally is to edit yourself, or to be editable, a word we made up, to talk about the process of what it means to allow others to press the backspace key on things that might feel like they're absolutely core to our character. And so in a flyby, that's what whole and intentional leader development is. As we get into the WiLD Toolkit, it's a system designed to meet those ends. So here's what we do at WiLD Leaders. In a nutshell, we focus on building really powerful development tools to scaffold meaningful development conversations. The WiLD Toolkit is a set of 10 assessment tools in a system that individuals can take sequentially or take an individual tool. Most folks tend to take the whole suite, and as you go along, I'll show you why. We build all of our WiLD initiatives and analytic reports for universities off of the WiLD Toolkit. We also provide leader education that's built on the WiLD Toolkit, both one-off workshops on the different topics you'll see in a moment, as well as certification programs for facilitators and coaches to make sure that anyone who's going to use the process feels fully confident in their ability to understand the process, the research behind it, and how to use the easy process with the people that they work with. We also do executive education and have an executive fellows program. And lastly, we often come on campuses to speak for common days of learning or faculty development days or events when external guests are brought in. So a lot of custom speaking events and offsites. So what is the WiLD Toolkit? The WiLD Toolkit is an annual leader development system with 10 research-based assessment tools and feedback reports. So most of us have taken an assessment tool at some point, and often we have a great conversation on your personality or your emotional intelligence and awareness or maybe strengths. And we might have that conversation with a mentor, a coach, or oftentimes in a team. And when that conversation is done, if it's been effective, we usually say, what's next? What's the next step? I'm probably going to have a couple good conversations, but I might not revisit that tool again. And this is where the WiLD Toolkit steps in. It is designed as an annual development process, and there's 10 assessment tools. And so it answers the question of what's next by providing a pathway to continue diving in and having sequential conversations. We talk about these as tools, not tests, because they're tools you use, not tests you take. As you get into the system, you'll see that about half of the process is based on what we know from 4 decades of research on the developmental journey of leaders. And so there's a lot of prescription, a lot of measures of progress and data, quantitative data. At the same time, a good measure of the process is also your story, your narrative, the qualitative answers that you give alongside measures of progress. So you have just enough handholds to be able to have a direction, but not so much prescription that we're just giving you a color, telling you your spirit animal, and putting you in a box. And the process is yours. It's a really personal process because we know that as whole people, the things that are happening off the job certainly impact how you show up as a leader on the job. And so it's designed in a way that the whole process is yours. No one is looking over your shoulder. And it's all about the questions. We call WiLD questions, questions that we oftentimes scream inside but might whisper out loud. And the process is designed to help you approach answers that unleash your agency or personal direction in your development, and questions that you know matter, even if you don't have the answer right away. We definitely love to get to the answers, but we know so much of development happens through the questions. And the toolkit is a scaffold. The tools come alive through conversation. And what we have done is created the scaffold for you and your team members to have the conversations you most want to have, that you're likely having over a cup of coffee or a beer somewhere, but you want to be able to have and integrate alongside your work. And it's about you and it's about other people. Leaders matter, and so you matter. We want to help you stand strong, and we assume that other people matter too. And so this process is to develop your capacity for your sake and the sake of others. So what does the WiLD Toolkit look like with faculty and staff? I'm going to dive into that, and then we'll move to what does it look like with students. Here's a couple quotes from a senior academic leadership team we recently did a kickoff with. But the toolkit is an amazing process to use for faculty as well as staff. And oftentimes we found some of the most successful programs are when senior leaders bring both leaders from both parties together so that faculty and staff are developing alongside each other and breaking down some of those artificial barriers that can naturally crop up in a university system. So here's one example of a type of program we have run that is a cohort based. We had a university that said a big need is the ability to have future leaders ready. They had a number of leaders on the dean's cabinet as well as at the vice president level and provost level who were going to be transitioning. And they wanted to make sure that they helped invest in that next generation of faculty leaders. We've done similar programs with staff, and again, mixed groups of faculty and staff as well. And so they wanted to make sure that we were able to get a really good group of folks who were being invested in and groomed for that next level of leader. So vice presidents and deans hand-selected faculty who had expressed interest or were deemed as having the potential to move into one of those roles. 30 faculty came together because they received an invitation from the president, and so the program filled by invitation in a day. And what we did is we came in and delivered a set of workshops over a period of a year. We started with a kickoff where we got to help them get a sense of what does it look like to do whole and intentional leader development, looking at their profile and their purpose as a leader, and then moved into their leadership presence, how they're showing up, and their portfolio of experience, competencies, and learning strategies. And then moved into the people that they're investing in, the people they're surrounding themselves with, and creating a comprehensive plan so they can be generative in their development and keep the conversations and the momentum going. The WiLD Toolkit was the foundation for this process. And so what they did was they put people together in smaller groups within the cohort that each had an internal champion, and then they would have the choice to cascade those conversations with the person they reported to directly in a monthly meeting. So here's what the time looked like over the year. We came and led those workshops, although we've had institutions where we've trained internal champions to take those moments, but then the toolkit becomes the scaffold across. And so this group of emerging leaders had a conversation on the WiLD profile. Every month in between those workshop moments where we teach them a coaching process and give them the chance to dig deeper into the research and literature around the development of a leader alongside their own story, they start with the WiLD profile, a baseline tool that gives them a sense of who you are and where you are right now. If you go to a mall and you're looking to find a store, you look at the map, and the first thing it tells you is where you are in relation to that store. And so the profile is a fantastic baseline on personality, developmental readiness, work and life fulfillment, character, and how your work overlaps, your purpose overlaps with the context and mission of the institution. So they would take this assessment tool about 30 minutes, and they would come together for a conversation to unpack that in a small group. Then they had another conversation on the calling and purpose inventory, looking at their transcendent purpose, their big why, and how that connects to the way that they are wired and their strengths and the things they can't help but do well, and how that connects to their work. Then looking at their goals across their work and their life, personal goals, financial goals, health goals, work goals. What's the purpose behind those goals, and what are some specific things to increase their fulfillment in each of those categories of life, directly related to the job and that we know will impact and support it? That moved into leading under pressure. How do you show up when the pressure is at its highest, and what does it look like for you to regulate your emotions and stay both deeply connected to your stakeholders, but also convicted in what you believe at the very same time? Then transformational experiences. There's a lot of research on the experiences that we know will help somebody raise to their next level of leadership effectiveness. So what experiences have you had in the past? What are you going through right now that has the potential of turning you into a better leader? And what are the experiences you want next? And this is different than asking for a title or moving somebody into a role. This is saying what experiences are going to help to round you out and give you the capability to lead for that next level. That moved into motivation and learning. What are the learning strategies? How do you navigate learning agility and growth mindsets to be able to get the most out of the experiences you're going through so you do, in fact, turn them into skills and competencies? What are the leadership skills? Oftentimes I'll hear a faculty member who, let's say, was trained in history as a historian. They know their discipline really well, and they know the competencies in their discipline. The competencies they don't have is a taxonomy for what is a leadership, what are the leadership skills that I either have or need to develop that I can be more intentional in bringing people around me to support. And then looks at people. Who are the people I'm investing in on my short list to multiply and invest in the development of other leaders? And who are the people around me in my strategic network of support? Who is giving me feedback on how I'm showing up? Who is challenging my ways of thinking? Who's advocating me? And who is just supporting me when I've just got a tough situation that I don't know what to do and they can give me advice? Getting intentional about being surrounded, because while leadership can be lonely, we believe that leaders never should be. And it culminates with a WiLD plan. Takes pre-post measures across the 10 developmental assessment tools and creates a plan for what my next steps might be. So this is a really rich program, and this is a type of program that we can both deliver at WiLD Leaders or equip an internal team of champions to run themselves. At the very end, because we have data across 10 assessment moments, we're able to create an incredibly rich analytic organizational profile to show the developmental snapshot of the leaders who have gone through that program and how the institution might invest in them next, where the collective strengths are and where the gaps are. At the very end, when we run these programs on an annual basis, it's amazing because faculty go through and they say, I would love to come back, or staff, and be involved as a small group facilitator or be part of the facilitation of these groups. And oftentimes they get even more when they go back through the second time. So this is a programmatic, cohort-based approach. And for some institutions, this makes sense. And when we come and do the kickoff and maybe let the champions take the rest of the process, we can create an incredibly rich, yet accessible and scalable, affordable process for institution. But many times, someone will say, I just want to take this for my team. Can I just do this for the Dean's Cabinet or for the chairs in humanities? And the answer is yes. If you want to do this for your team, you want to do it just for the enrollment team, just for the advising team or the career center, you can absolutely do that. And here's what it looks like for a team, or if an individual is going to go through with a mentor or a coach. The first thing is starting with a whole leader development kickoff. When we have a team go through, we'll have one of our master coaches conduct a 1-hour virtual session with the team to give it a little bit of insight into what does whole leader development look like and how can you get the most out of this process. We'll get everybody into the system and get a license to the tool, and then on a monthly basis, a team will take the individual assessment tools, read their feedback reports, and then come together for a really meaningful conversation, building development alongside the very fabric of the work instead of making a separate, unrelated event. So here's what that looks like. Again, they'd start with a WiLD profile, move into calling and purpose, purposeful goals, leading under pressure, transformational experiences, motivation and learning, all the way through the process, and it becomes an easy, bite-sized monthly piece. So once a month you take a 30-minute assessment tool, have a 45 to 60-minute conversation with your team, getting to know each other, building deeper trust with a common shared language for development, getting specific about how you can support each other, and then cascading those meetings into one-on-ones with the leader of that team if you have that structure in place. Makes an easy, bite-sized way to keep development front of mind throughout the life cycle of the year. Often teams will start this sometime in the fall term and work their way all the way through summer, maybe taking a break with Christmas. It's an incredibly easy plug-and-play process. We give a facilitator guide that shares the 3 questions you should ask in a team meeting, and it brings that development right alongside the mission that you're trying to accomplish. When we use it with students, there's a similar process, but it looks a little bit different. One of the things we do is we have a full course called Leading a Whole and Intentional Life. And this is some sample comments from a class we just ran in a 3-day intensive. And this is what some of the students from freshman to senior said just from taking the tools. They hadn't even come to class yet, just going through the toolkit on a virtual basis before they came to the class for meaningful conversations. We've built these tools into graduate level programs for capstones or alongside a discipline for freshmen through seniors, oftentimes used as a student success initiative, so a freshman experience or a sophomore experience for that sophomore slump. We have teams using this in an honors program, an amazing amount of ways, both in person and virtually, for using it in the classroom. So this is what that looks like. Our assumption is that the students are already developing in the programming you have, experientially, their own career development, and alongside all these student success initiatives in the core content that you have, either as part of a student success initiative or as part of their discipline. And so first thing we do is give you a fully formed syllabus. And we start by giving a graduate level syllabus that you can taper back. So A business school or a psychology program might say, I have a leadership class, I have an organizational behavior class at the graduate level, and I want to build these in so that my students are actually experiencing the constructs that we are studying in the course. And so in that case, we would say, here's the list of seminal readings behind each of the research-based tools in the module. And so if you're going to dive into the purposeful goals assessment and have a rich experience for those students as they set their goals and get ready to launch out of their program, they might also at the same time be reading the seminal research on goal setting behind that tool. So it can be as deep and rich as you would like, and we're using a number of graduate programs. I personally built it into a graduate program that I ran in a prior role, and it was incredible. But you can also just build it into a capstone by just having the tools. So here's an example of what that looks like over a 16-week semester in a student success program. Students take the assessment tool weekly or bi-weekly, they read their feedback report, and then when they come to class, you set up a conversation in a pair or in a small group. So you start with an overview of what does whole leader development look like. You've taken the tools ahead of them, and so you have a conversation based on your experience, or you just quickly show one of the videos that we have in our library at the beginning of class. Then you move into personality and developmental readiness, calling and purpose, purposeful goals, integrating it with their discipline, going through those same set of topics you saw before. It's designed to go sequentially, although the program is flexible. And so if you want to move the investing in people module up early, depending on the structure of your class, it's easy to do as well, and students can move at their own pace throughout the system. Oftentimes it'll end with a presentation where students, it's amazing the level of employability they have when they can go to a hiring manager for an internship or a job, or talk to a recruiter and be able to talk about their purpose and how they show up in high pressure situations and what their tendency is, and talk about the experience and competencies they want next, and not just a job. When they know the people they're investing in, they know who is surrounding them, and they've got clarity about who they are, where they are going, and why. It's an incredible conversation and just makes students stand out. So the retention rates we see for students in connecting their discipline with their longer term purpose is rich, but also the employment rates within a field of their choice are really high as well. So some great outcomes we see when folks build this into the curriculum. Again, at the end, we give students a certificate in whole leader development, so there's a nice carrot for them at the very end to put on their resume or their LinkedIn profile. And across the 10 assessment tools, we're able to create a really rich analytic profile for the institution, both for outcomes as well as for accreditation purposes. And so this is one example of leading a whole and intentional life that we've done both virtually, in hybrid, or full residential sessions. We also have another format, which is doing the intensive session. And this is the same process, except for, in this case, oftentimes a 3-day session where students will have taken all the assessment tools ahead of time in a virtual format and then work them through in 3 intensive days. So these are a couple examples for how we have built them in to programs for faculty, for staff, and actually embedded it into the curriculum itself. In terms of the cost, it's a very approachable process. Right now, the toolkit retails for $299 per person for an annual license. What that means is if you're going to take your team of 10 staff members through this process for $3,000, or less than the cost of sending 2 people to a conference, you have an entire year of assessment tools that bring their development and those conversations alongside your work throughout the entire year. And when we build it into curriculum, we have a student discount. So for $150, or the cost of a textbook, students will be able to pick it up in lieu of a textbook or alongside and build it right into the curriculum. And so there's a couple ways that happens with students. Most often, We will give the faculty member a student discount code. So when the students get their syllabus, they're able to go to our site. They use a discount code when they check out, and they're able to get access immediately to their personalized dashboard, as well as the 10 developmental assessment tools and the video library to guide them through the process. Other times, it'll be built in as a course fee, and we will get the names and emails of the students ahead of time, upload them into our system, and send them directions to get started. Either way, it's an incredibly easy process to start. Whether we are brought in and our cadre of coaches to help do the workshops and launch it for an intensive faculty development cohort, or if we're training an internal team to run the process internally for faculty, staff, or building into students, it's easy and it's ready to go. So we'd love to answer any more questions you might have and set up a conversation about your developmental needs and how we have seen it really help transform the whole person development process on campus in a variety of contexts. Thanks so much. Looking forward to connecting.